And this, my friends, is how we should view our faith. Something small and indestructible that will blossom into the everlasting love of the universe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Irenicast. I'm your host, Jeff, and with me is my co-host, Alan.
Hello there.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month, we bring to you our perspective on theology and culture from a post-evangelical lens. Thank you for joining us for another conversation to provoke your progressive Christian imagination. This week, we have a third person in the booth. If you remember back in May, we had our Intersections Roundtable, and since then we've had Bonnie on in July, which was great, and Casey's joining us today. Casey is the... Hello. Casey's the lead pastor of Loomis Basin UCC, and he is, which will give you a hint into our topic today, is a certified Enneagram instructor, and we're gonna jump into the fold. If you've listened to any podcast, I feel like in our niche, whether it's the liturgist or, pick one, the Enneagram has been mentioned. People on their Twitter profiles, they have their numbers and their wings and their whatever, and
they wear shirts and stuff.
I know, yeah.
I actually have a shirt. I should have worn my shirt.
Hey,
nice. So we're going to talk about that, and Casey's going to walk us through, and we're going to maybe get a little vulnerable, maybe get a little, I don't know, whatever the term is, real, 100%. We're going to keep it 100. I don't know.
Keep it 100.
I need to stop trying to be hip.
Particularly, don't be hip. Particularly,
all those words, real, vulnerable, all of those are great words for the Enneagram and definitely for your guys' type. So we will definitely talk about that today.
Yeah, Casey has all of our info, so it's going to be fun.
Right.
Kind of looking at that. And also, why does, progressive culture in general, Christians really latch on to stuff like the Enneagram? So it's going to be great to hear from that too.
And, yeah, absolutely.
And for our segment this week, we are going to be, since we have a brand new guest, we want to get to know them a little bit. We're going to do another round of Jesus Juke and see where that takes us for our segment. So let's get into this. This is a funny story. Is that recently Casey and I got to hang out, and we were at this restaurant that had, hands down, I think one of the worst servers in the history of the world. And
absolutely,
we were talking in Enneagram, and he mentioned something like, I think he said something like, "You're a total 2." And the waiter overheard that and thought that he was talking about like rating my looks on a scale of 1 to 10.
Right. That's right. I think that was also around the same time that he flicked the wasp off of your plate.
That's right. I had a deep fried wasp in my French fries, and he just flicked it onto my lap and it fell onto the floor. And yeah,
I was in awe.
Well, at least he was willing to give you an 8, Jeff.
I know. That's right. He said at least an 8, and then he kept rubbing my shoulder after that. So
hey,
I'm particular about my physical space with people I don't know, and that was violated on.
To
many
be fair,
fronts.
I'm willing to go with him on the 8. Just so you know.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Look at this.
Put in the show notes my picture on Hot or Not.
Start rating each other. It's very insightful.
Is it, Casey?
All right, Casey, lead us through this. Like, what is the Enneagram? What attracted you to it in the first place? And give us kind of a basic rundown for maybe someone who has never heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that maybe have done the Myers-Briggs, it's sort of like that. It's a personality type test, right? And a lot of times the Myers-Briggs is used in work settings to help you try to navigate how you work best in a group. I think that the Enneagram is a little different. I would say it's a lot more soul work than it is just sort of knowing the box in which you live. I think the Enneagram is more about noticing the box in which you live and trying to find your way, not necessarily out of it, but notice that it is the box in which you live and how do you live in it and work through it, right? I think that for a lot of progressive Christians, they're using this because for so many of us, the word sin has become such a terrible word, right? It's tarnished. And for many of us who have experienced the oppression of evangelicals telling us that we're sinners, we've kind of wanted to get away from all of that. And so what I think the Enneagram does is it allows us to notice our egos or our shadow selves. It's the places in which we can't really see ourselves well. The way that I talk about sin is anything that separates you from God, neighbor, and self. And I think that that's exactly what the ego does. it sets us apart. And so if you live with a certain lens from whatever type you are, and we'll get into that in a minute, it's the lens in which you see, but that lens is, it wears off. It gets old, right? Just like all of us that wear glasses. Over time, that lens no longer works for us. And so this helps us to notice the lens in which we see the world and helps us to see that there are 9 other types. So the Enneagram has 9 types, and there are 3 different centers in which you formulate. So that is the heart center, the gut center, and the head center. And today we'll be talking a lot about the heart center because we all live in the heart center. So 8, 9s, and 1s are gut types. They work from their instinct, just that visceral response. Heart types are 2, 3, and 4. And then head types are 5, 6, and 7. That's kind of the foundation of the Enneagram. I can go through what each type is called if you guys would like. Ones are... Go ahead.
I'd like that. But I also want to also ask you and kind of go back. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about this later, but talking about how we've looked at the self as sinful and that kind of thing from our past, understanding yourself and, evangelical circles being a negative thing. They quoted Proverbs a lot. The heart is desperately wicked. Who can know it? And it was less about getting to understand yourself and more about suppressing anything you find there and definitely conforming to an ideal. And the Enneagram sounds like it's more of a understand yourself, like however you're operating, whether it's under stress or not, or your shadow self or this other stuff, just understand it and hold
That's right. Well, and I think that you're right, Alan. It's about understanding yourself and acknowledging where your hangups are, right? That's the difference, I believe, between the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram. The Myers-Briggs says, know yourself and be happy with that. The Enneagram says, acknowledge that this is the place that you may get caught up. It's an awakening to yourself. And I often tell people, if you're not ready for transformation in your life, the Enneagram is not for you. Because the moment that you come awake to some of this, it's almost embarrassing. I don't know how it was for you guys when you got your results, but I remember sitting with my partner, Jose, and as we're reading aloud our Enneagram types, we're snickering at each other because we're like, oh my gosh, you're so busted. This is totally you, And so that was my first experience of the Enneagram, is when I could see on paper for the first time, that I wasn't alone, that, it wasn't like this was specifically tailored to me. And yet it was tailored to me. It was my darkest thoughts, my darkest wonderings, and all of the stuff that the ego says to me. So pretty interesting.
And we've often lamented on this show our upbringing in evangelicalism and all that kind of stuff, and then talking about how much damage the idea of total depravity as human beings. And I was always growing up, we were told too many people, they're worried about self-esteem. They should have Christ esteem. That whole stupid line.
I've heard that from the
yeah, several times. So I think that does resonate with a lot of post-evangelical progressives who were never really invited to search their own heart. It was always like, God search my heart. So it was this kind of, whatever. It never really amounted to anything except for guilt and shame and hiding. And in going into that idea of like self-judgment, right? Because it is a judgment, but like more of the biblical idea of judgment, which is not like a condemnation, but a revelation, right? Like putting your stuff out there so that you can then sort through it. And
and I'd like to explore that more after we go through the types, because I think that idea of judge and shame really also plays into your type as a 2. Both of you are 2s, which I think is super interesting. And I'm a 4. And so we all live in that heart center. And how we navigate love is really different. And yet, for all of us, one of the things we struggle with is shame and rejection. Especially as people who come from an evangelical world, I think that we bought into that so much more as 2s and 4s because we wanted to be people pleasers. We wanted to be people who were seen as loyal and loving, and we gave our entire souls away, literally.
This got real fast.
I know, right? I feel like we've reached the top of that clicking hill before roller coaster. So now, Casey, just guide us through the rest of the ride.
All right. We'll just go in order 1 through 9. So 1s are the good people. They're the good person. They are idealistic. They are high-minded. They're very conscientious. And one of the things that they struggle with is seeing things as good. You know, a lot of our ego messages come from what we saw in the world had failed us. So, for example, God says it is good. The world is good. Ones would say the world is not good enough and it is my job to make it good. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It is sort of a response. Our ego message is a response to some of these things.
They're like the peacemaker or something like that. And well, do you want to say that it's on a circle? Because I think for people listening,
yes, that's
maybe
right.
having that image
maybe
helps.
We can put that in the notes. Mm-hmm. It's on a circle, and there are connecting lines, and those connecting lines talk about your integrated self and your disintegrated self. I mean, we're doing an hour podcast, so I could come on and talk more about, the disintegration and integration lines. But I just want to sort of get the lay of the land today.
Right. And we will put that in the show notes. So based off of Casey's recommendations, we'll make sure that there's a list of resources in the show notes at irenacast.com/27 if you really want to explore further the things that are talking about. So we're hitting bullet points and then we're going to get into some personal stuff. But if you really want to go in depth, as usual, we will make sure that there are links provided in the show notes. irenacast.com/127.
Right. And so for the struggling one, or the less resourceful one, the less awake one, will struggle with not being right. They want to be right. And they can go to being super moralistic, which is also a thing that 4s and 2s would struggle with. Moralism, because we have connection to 1. 2s are the loving person, which is both of you. I would identify both of you as super loving, especially Alan, the big teddy bear. They are definitely attuned to others' needs. They are supportive. They are nurturing. They are warm. They are gentle, friendly. But when they are feeling tired, stressed out, they can be compulsive. They can move to anger very quickly. I don't know how many times either of you have said this, but I've definitely heard 2s say things like, "For all I've done for them, they are so ungrateful."
That's like my mantra. I'm pretty sure that's like...
There you go.
I think it depends. One thing that was interesting, Jeff and I are 2s, but we have different wings. So I wing to 1 and he wings to 3. And in the 2 wing 1, it's I think more of a society-wide altruistic type or something like that. And so I think for me, I do get angry at like systems, and I don't know. It has happened before.
Right. So a part of the 2, those lines of disintegration, you connect to 8, which 8s are the champions of justice, but they also have lots of anger issues. And
so I think someone in my family is an 8 that I've always kind of said, like, they seem like my dark side or my shadow side, or like,
that's right.
I see things in them that I don't like about myself. And then once I took the Enneagram, I was like, wow, I'm just judgmental of other people, because it's not bad to be an 8. It's just who you are.
That's
and
right.
I was judging someone else only because I go to that personality type when I'm under stress.
And as a 4 in my stress, I go to 2. And so I often, the type that I struggle with the most are 2s, because I see so much of my own. Can we cuss on this podcast?
You can. We may edit it out, but that's
okay.
Just for...
All right.
I love that
Well, I
question.
see so much of my own shit in 2s, right? And so...
well, welcome to Irenacast, hosted by 2 2s.
That's right. So there it is. Then the next style is 3, the effective person. So if God created the earth in 7 days, 3s would say, I could have done it in 5. They are efficient, they are productive, they are enthusiastic and motivated people, and they are very efficient. And so a lot of times, if you want something done, you ask a 3 to get it done. I currently have this amazing new church member. She's a 3, and she hammers out work like nobody's business. I mean, she does circles around me while holding another job. And so I'm just so grateful for the energy of the 3. But in their own less resourceful place, they can become preoccupied with their image and focus too much on what others expect of them. They want to be admired for their accomplishments and performance. So a lot of times when you ask a 3, who are you? They're not going to tell you the soul stuff. They're going to tell you what they do. Because for them, who they are is what they do.
Even though they're a heart type, right?
That's right. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. Then there's the 4, the original person. That would be me. We are creative. We value creativity, authenticity, individuality. We have an appreciation for the quality of life. We are deeply sensitive. We are very nostalgic. And we want the world to be beautiful and have meaning and purpose. And we are if I didn't say it before, let me repeat, we are very unique and special.
The one and only Casey.
That is for sure. But also in our less resourceful self, we can be overly sensitive. We can be sensitive to the idea of abandonment or left out or misunderstood. Because if you're super unique and special, no one can truly understand you, right? We are prone to melancholy and envy. And I really would like to get to the envy part later, because I think a lot of people think that envy is like of things, but for 4s, it's not necessarily about material things. It's about lived experience, the things that we maybe wish we had or the things we long to return to.
So if you're 4 and a middle child, then you're just like set up for issues because you feel special.
That's right. 5s are the wise person. They are intellectuals. They value truth and have the natural ability to both analyze the essence of things and synthesize the big picture. They want to understand the world and make it more enlightened. The problem with 5s, when they are in their less resourceful place, they become overly intellectual. They're out of touch with their feelings. They're out of touch with the people around them. I know lots of 5s who sort of live in their head, and you can sort of be in a room with them and you know that they're not there. They're 10 miles away. They are very withdrawn and self-sufficient because they're looking to protect themselves. And they do not want to be bothered, which is another interesting 5 thing. They do not want intruders. They don't want to be bothered. I would say one of their biggest things is they're sort of miserly. They want to hold on to their knowledge and their own personal space. 6s, the loyal person. My partner is a 6. They are law-abiding. They are dutiful. They are honorable, faithful, responsible, dedicated, courageous. Which is also a funny thing about 6s, because in their less resourceful place, they are not courageous. They're fearful. That is the message that they're constantly playing. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. We all have fear, but I would say that 6s carry the market on fear in the Enneagram. They are the ones who read the directions. They know where every exit is. They have a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit in their trunk. They're ready to go with extra bottles of water in case a natural disaster happens. These are those kinds of folks.
So my current partner that I've been seeing for a while is a 6 also. And what's cool about that is like the attention to detail like actually translates into hard work in a way that's just like kicks butt. It's kind of cool to see. Right.
My partner is a definite overachiever without having to be, because he is so detail oriented. But what they struggle with, their less resourceful place tells them that they have to check in with others. Their ego message says, you are okay or fine if you're doing what's expected of you. And so the real struggle for 6s is to find their own inner voice and to adhere to that and not to the voices of the people that they trust around them. Ooh, did that get deep? 6s out there, I want to hear from you. Yeah. Wow. 7s are the joyful people. They are the party folks, lively, cheerful. They have a natural ability to find the good in everything, and they want to make the world a more enjoyable place. These are the kinds of people that when you're at their house, at a barbecue, drinking beer, having a good time, are the ones telling you about the next party that they're going to throw. And they're also doing 50 things at once. If you ask them, oh, what are you up to? They're going to tell you about 3 projects that they're working on and their PTA meeting and their soccer for their kids. I mean, they're doing all of these things, and they can be exhausting. But in their less resourceful place, they can exaggerate their fun. They avoid pain big time, because that's sort of their way of protecting themselves. If we keep everything happy and light, we don't have to touch on the hard things of life. While they seek excitement and pleasure, they may avoid the hard work and suffering that often goes along with actually completing the projects that they have begun. So they'll start things and won't finish them. Next are the powerful people, the 8s. I really love eights. Raj, who was on the Intersections podcast with us, is an eight, and I love him because eights are strong, they are fair, and they have the ability to get things done with the use of power. They are direct and energetic, confident and assured, and they stand up for the underdog and want to eliminate injustice in the world. All the eights I know, when they channel their energy, are probably the most just and courageous people I know, because they do not back down from a fight. But those eights that I know that are living in their less resourceful places become overly controlling, aggressive, and vengeful. And they may seek to dominate others and have difficulty with compassion. Eights, when they walk into a room, you'll know an eight because they just sort of take up the room. They just sort of demand your presence. And they'll also be the ones who may become super aggressive. So I remember sitting at a table with a 6. Someone at another table said, "I'm an 8." And the 6 leaned over and said, "Danger, danger," right? Just whispered to me, "Danger, danger." For 6s, 8s can be really overwhelming because of the energy that they can bring into a room. The last type is the 9, the peaceful person. Their approach to life is, hey, it's all good, acceptance. They are diplomatic and can allow people and events to just unfold at their own pace. They're not trying to force anything into the world. They're calm and inclusive, and they want to make the world a more harmonious place. Nines are
that's
really
the peacemaker. I think I said a 1 was, but it's 9, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay.
9s are the peaceful people. But in their less resourceful place, they can be passive. They can lose their own point of view and avoid taking a stand on anything. And they may put off important activities and get lost in the unimportant distractions. One of the ways that I like to talk a lot about 9s is that they go to sleep on their lives in their less resourceful place. And that goes from like just not dealing or confronting the pain or struggle in their life or conflict. I mean, for some, I have a really close friend of mine who literally, I know when he's super stressed because he'll come over to our house and just fall asleep on my couch. He'll just literally go to sleep on his life. 9s are wonderful. They are the peaceful people. And yet sometimes if they're not awake to themselves, they can just sort of fall asleep on everything that's happening around them. So that's the Enneagram. Those are the 9 types. Any thoughts or...
So before we move forward, I have a question, because I think that this is one of the things that has bothered me, not just about the Enneagram, but personality tests in general. I've always been adverse to them, like just kept them at arm's distance. And I don't mean to diminish the Enneagram by just labeling it a personality test. But that's anyway.
That's what it is.
Right. Yeah. It's what it is. So how, especially when you become so knowledgeable, like, I mean, Casey, you know so much about all this. How do you prevent from making assumptions about who people are when you know so much about the types? And then it must be hard to balance, because as soon as you meet someone, you maybe start like running through the numbers in your head. And then how do you prevent like really appreciating someone for who they are first before jumping to trying to figure out their number?
Exactly. That's one of the big things that we push against when we teach the Enneagram, is not to type people, because you're then putting them in a box that maybe they wouldn't put themselves in. And you're also working from a place of putting them in a box. For example, when I first learned the Enneagram, I was super turned off by it, because the person who taught it to me was my advisor in my internship. And he was continuing to tell me, "Oh, you're a 2, you're a 2. Oh, you're just being a 2." And as I read through the Enneagram, I was like, quite frankly, I don't love people that much. Like, I'm not that kind of person. And so it felt really awkward to me when he would say, "Oh, you're just being a 2." And so it really stifled my desire to learn any more about the Enneagram, because, well, if you have me figured out, then what do I need to do any more research, right? But then when I came back to the Enneagram and had a different person teach it to me, and I found that I was a 4, it made so much more sense. And so I would say to anybody who is getting into the Enneagram or who is learning it for the first time, be very mindful about how you use this tool, because you don't want to put somebody in a box, for their own sake. You don't know their heart's desire. You don't know what the ego message in them is. You're just seeing whatever behaviors or patterns that they're playing out for you. But really, it's your own heart that you have to answer. But also, you don't want to do that because then you're missing out on the whole person. You're missing out on the full story.
Right. I think it's important in all of these personality tests, whether it's Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, to know what they don't say. Enneagram doesn't say everything about a person. None of these personality tests do. Like, I can't tell whether someone is capable at a certain task just by what number they're on, what number they are. Like, they may not have had the life experience or the education or the learning that prepares them to be, I don't know, like you might say a nurse would be a really good, or a number 6 would be a really good nurse because they're dedicated, loyal, and hardworking. But you can be a 6 and not be hardworking. You can be a 6 and not actually really care about other people or like not want to. So I think keeping in mind what they don't say is really good. And also for me, I'm new to the Enneagram and I appreciate Casey like really working with me through it. I took Myers-Briggs in my marriage and it was good for me just to have language to talk about myself and talk about someone else, even if that language never fully lined up. It was a good, you said tool, I think, at one point. Like this
absolutely.
Test is a tool.
Yeah, this is a tool.
To use.
Yeah, Alan, I really want to affirm that because for my partner and I, when we took the Enneagram together, it really opened up for us a new conversation, almost a new relationship. Because we both, for 4s and 6s, we both come to the world with fear. For Jose, he's like Chicken Little, right? I mean, the sky is always falling. And for 4s, it's about our own worlds crumbling. So he's worried about like actual physical things happening. And I'm just worried about things that may potentially happen in my life. And so fear in terms of how we talk about fear together was really helpful because it gave us ways to talk about, you know, how we navigate our relationship, how we navigate moving forward, because I'm always thinking about what's next. I'm always riding in the air and he's always freaking out about that because for him, he's worried that it's going to actually happen, you know?
And it gives you language. Like you said, it gives you ways to say. And to me, it's like, this is language for relationships.
Are there typical pairings? Like, are there numbers that tend to gravitate towards each other?
So that's a real, so people will say like, so what are the 2 best types to be in relationship? And I say healthy types. Like, as long as you're working on your shit and doing your hard work, no matter what type you are, you're going to be great to be with because you're aware of yourself. You know your patterns. You're able to express, you know, what you need or how you're going to navigate through your stuff, you know. But if you're working through your stuff and your partner isn't, that's a heavy load to carry, you know,
regardless of what number you are.
Of what number you are. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. And I think, and I appreciate your emphasis on the fact that, you know, your personality type is not static, right? Like you move into different areas depending upon where you are in the world and then how much you're doing your own personal self-care and self-work. So it doesn't there's, like you were saying before with the Myers-Briggs, it doesn't accept this is what you are, this is what you'll always be, but there's some fluid motion in there. And I think that's, to me, what is a little bit more encouraging about this is because I feel like it's easy just to get stuck in a place and then, you know, whatever numbers, like I'm ABG, whatever the letters are for the other one. And that's just who I am and you have to deal with it, you know, and I like that there's, you know, wings explain wings. So
that's right. So before we move to wings, what I want to say is the invitation of the Enneagram is to say you have one lens in which you have seen the world forever. And this is a defense mechanism, right? I mean, your ego was formed out of a way of survival as a child. And so you have used this defense mechanism your entire life. And so the invitation is to notice the 8 other numbers around you and find a way to navigate them. It's like this lens in which you're seeing the world is old and faulty. So try a different lens on, you know, especially in problem solving. If you're coming to something in your work where there's lots of conflict, you can say, well, where do I need to be in this? Should I put on the 9 lens and allow there to be peace? And how do I tap into that peaceful place? Or do I put on the 8 lens and stand up for justice and speak truth to whatever powers I need to? Or if you're a head type and you need to get out of your head and connect to your heart, how do I do that? What resources do twos have that I can reach for? So it's really noticing that you're not living in a world of scarcity. There's an abundance all around you that you're able to tap into. And you just have to be able to be aware enough to know that you need a different lens, you know?
And before we get into wings, can you tell us, Casey, if someone's listening to, I'm just thinking about a listener right now. If there's a listener who wants to go with you on the wings and stuff and look through it, is there a website they can get this test and take it for themselves? That's right. So that
so I would definitely I always suggest a paid test because you're going to get more information. The website that I use is WEPSS.com. That test was created by the man that I learned the Enneagram from, Jerry Wagner. He's wonderful, brilliant. He's been doing this. This is his life's work. And he's a 5. So you know it's been done well and thoroughly researched, right? That's where I would go. And it will also give you your wing and tell you more about that. So when we talk about wings, so if you, whatever number you are, so for Alan and Jeff, you're a 2, your number is 2. So on the right side of you, you would have 1. And on the left side of you, you would have 3. So those are what we would call your wings. And you will often lean to one side stronger than the other.
I lean to 1. Jeff leans to 3.
Absolutely.
The tests say.
Right, and I'm a 4, and so 5 and 3 on either side of me, and I lean towards 3. I don't even know what my 5 wing looks like. That's a lot of work for me. You know, that was a major revelation I've had in the last year and a half is how do I get to that 5 place? Because wings really are sort of like if you're paddling in a boat. I'm kayaking now. That's like a new thing that I've taken up. And if I'm only kayaking on one side, I'm just going in circles, right? What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over.
That's right, and expecting different result. And so if you're only using that one wing, that one resource, it's like just using the one lens of the Enneagram. You're just going in circles. And so the invitation is to tap into that other wing so that you can row forward. Ooh, that was so deep. And so I really have been trying to find in myself that 5 place that loves isolation, that is interested in knowledge. One of my mentors in the Enneagram asked me, well, you know, where are you miserly? And I was like, I'm not miserly. There was like a wall that was thrown up. But then I began to realize, yeah, maybe I am. Or maybe I need to find a place where I can be a little miserly, a little greedy with my time or my energy, or not always have to speak to every topic. And really allow myself to sit back, listen, and learn. So every type has a wing, and you just have to figure out which of those wings you lean heavily on and try to reach for the other. And they flavor you, right? So Jeff and Alan are both 2s, but Alan has that one wing, which definitely makes him a different personality than Jeff. And also there's another layer, and that is your sexual self, your social self, and your self-preservation self. So it's called a stack. And those 3 things also flavor your personality. That would take so much more time to talk about. But I mean, these are all layers and flavors of who you are as a person.
Right. Well, do we really have to like work on the other wing? Because I mean, for the show, if I'm wing 3 and Alan's wing 1, it just balances it out and it keeps us moving forward.
As long as you have the right team.
That's right.
That's right. But I think you're missing out, right? We miss out on those other flavors that could help us. Like I was saying before, with being a 4 with that 3 wing, I lean so heavily on my 3 wing that sometimes I think I'm blurring into just becoming a 3. I mean, you can't really do that, but because I value efficiency, I love being a pastor. I mean, being a pastor is so important to me. And so I often, when people, ask, what's your name? I'm Pastor Casey. But that's a part of that 3 image stuff. That's how I want to be seen. That's how I want to be known. And I'm
is a wing sort of like a projection or like a desire that's what you really want to be, or that's what you're striving for?
I think,
or is that just an element of it?
Circle. You land closer to a 3 on the circle than just a 2.
That's right. It's just what flavors you. It's just sort of where you've went.
And I think that's why you 2 connect. Is Jeff took all the tests and he's like borderline 3, like very close, right?
Right.
Jeff,
right.
You did that many times. And so I think that's why you guys connect anyway.
Yeah. And but for 5, I mean, the 5 wing in me is it's so different because it's also in the head type. 5s are introverted head types, most of them. And 4s are drama queens and oftentimes, are a little more out there. And so going into my head and spending so much time there, any more than I already do would be overwhelming for me. But I think it's just finding ways to tap into that 5 place that allow me to be more miserly with my time and information. That could be good. I can be an oversharer.
So if I'm not reading wrong, like wings kind of tell you where in a 2 range you fit. Because like in some 2s, you're a little closer to a 1. You're a little closer to a 3.
Sure. If that's the way you need to look at it. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So for me, I'm a little closer to a 1, but just barely. I'm like right on the 2. The thing that was most, I think, helpful for me, and you can help me out, Casey, in seeing this, is the lines that move away from the 2. So like in my stress, I'll go to an 8. But in my health, I'll actually go to where you're at, a 4, I think.
That's right.
And I'll
That's
start
exactly right.
So when I'm unhealthy, I'll lay down the law. I'll be like, okay, this needs to be done. Like, in moments of stress, I remember, okay, I'm talking to my romantic partner in the car and a dog comes running up, like barking, ready to bite. I just grabbed her, brought her into the car and shut the door in one smooth motion. I knew what had to happen and I just executed it. And it feels like that's like an 8 thing. And then when I'm more like relaxed and like thinking about my life and less stressed out, I start actually discerning like, what do I want? What is about me that like start developing that inner self kind of stuff that I think 4s are really good at. So,
I love that you said when in your health, the thing that you thought was, what is about me? And I would say that 4s would say, what isn't about me?
Huh.
And so, yeah, that's so true that, you'll notice, Alan, when you're awake to yourself and you're more integrated, you will begin to be more creative.
Mm-hmm.
Your creativity starts flowing. You're able to begin to dream about what your future could look like. Yeah, those are all great qualities of 4 because you get some of the best qualities of 4 and you'll get some of our bad qualities, right? I notice in myself when I'm in my more integrated self, I and my health go to 1.
Is that what the line says, or is that
That's
just...
right. So if I am doing my work and I'm taking care of myself, I'm making lists, I'm getting stuff done, I'm double checking, triple checking on how to do it and how to do it right, and I feel so good, But if I'm not taking care of myself, if I haven't gotten enough sleep, I'm angry, I'm taking all the qualities of 2, your worst qualities, and living into them. Oh, those ungrateful people. Oh, nobody appreciates me or cares about what I do.
Also, just doing things like just trying to fix situations by just placating other people. Like just doing what you have to do to make sure that they're happy and that's it. Like maybe that's your bad place as opposed to your good place.
Well, and 2s, and also one of the things that 2s do is they will just do it for you, right? So the joke is that 2s sometimes know you better than you know yourself. And they will basically expect you to do whatever they say because they think that they know you better than yourself.
Okay, well now that stings a little bit.
Right?
I went through, marriage and then divorce and all that stuff. And like, to be honest, the biggest thing I learned in all of that was I felt like I knew people's needs when I really didn't. Like I felt like they needed something when they didn't necessarily need that. It was a weird revelation.
And you were so
me.
quick to help in ways that you thought you were being helpful, but really that was the last thing that they needed.
Right. And if you look at it from a super critical and like a critical perspective, it's almost like 2s in their unhealth will create needs in other people in order to fulfill them. Like
so let me tell you,
stuff.
So that is one of the things about 2s that I tell people to be mindful of, is that a lot of times when I go to lunch with 2s or I'm hanging out with 2s, I will buy my own stuff, even if they offer. Because for a lot of 2s, they create a web. I call it a web.
Yeah.
It's a web of love.
I called it a tornado, a vortex.
Let me show you how much I love you. Let me do all of these things for you, to show you that I love you. And they don't want to receive it back. I mean, it's sort of a mixed message that 2s, their biggest struggle is pride. They don't want help. They don't want it. But all the while they long to be loved. That's why they're doing what they're doing.
Jeff, I just saw you.
Oh man,
look
at the looks on both of your faces. Oh my goodness.
No, that absolutely rings true. As I can do it myself, for sure.
Right, and how true is that though?
What do you mean? Like, how true is that statement? Oh yeah, it's 100% true with me. I mean, Alan could attest. Like, I'd much rather take care of. And I think that it's interesting because as you're thinking about this, I'm thinking in terms of like how layered this is. Like, these aren't choices. They are choices, but these are part of our development, right? Like, what was our family dynamic and how did it create that kind of thing? Because I, from an early age, was independent because of my family situation. So it was like I became reliant. And it's interesting that Alan and I, we probably couldn't have had more different upbringings in terms of family, but how we still landed in the same spot. And then that probably determines where we wing. Yeah.
I think you're wing 3 and more efficient because of that. And I wing 1 more because I see the goodness or whatever in my family and how I was raised. Attachment theory is another personality, like typing kind of thing. Like, how do you attach to your relationships? Right. There's like secure attachment, anxious attachment, so there's ways to separate that out, and that plays into it as well. But I do think that, Jeff, you're saying people are shaped early on, and that's kind of what goes into your personality. But Casey, the one thing I struggle with the most in this is that I have a hard time not judging one type and appreciating another. Because like for me, health is a 4. So I'm like, oh, 4s are awesome. And like my unhealth is an 8. So I'm like, 8s are like, belligerent. Because I see that in myself. And so I think being able to just recognize that it's not a moral thing. It's more or less moral to be a codependent 2 or an angry 8. Like, there's not necessarily morality involved inside of what number you are.
Right.
But there is, right?
Can I put my pastor hat on?
Did you
for
say
a moment?
there is, Jeff?
But there is like in terms of like a morality hat, like, and I think it all goes back to the health, right? So if you're an 8, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if in your health you're harming other people, then I think you need to be. Casey, what do you think? But I think you need to be more hyper aware if your natural setting place or natural number has a tendency to hurt more people in the wake of your unhealth than if it didn't. Maybe that's just my heart.
I would say that every type has that potential. There's not one type in the Enneagram that doesn't have the potential to harm another, right?
Maybe I'm just revealing my disdain for an 8 as well.
I know.
See, here we are.
I think
here
you
we
are.
are.
So if you're there's 7s out there.
Because look, outward aggression. This is when we think of Dr. King writing the letter from Birmingham. He wasn't attacking the angry 8 Klansmen. He was attacking the complicit 9 pastors in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Right.
Who he said, I would much rather deal with the Klansmen than deal with you.
Right.
Because
but to be fair, I have equal animosity towards 9s as well. People and I should clarify that when it's expressed unhealthily, like those unhealthy expressions really trigger me. It's the same idea
that we were saying about all of them. What is the best and worst type? Well, the best and worst type is any type that is unhealthy and choosing not to do their work, choosing not to notice their shadow and get the help they need. And what's the best type? Any type who's willing to acknowledge their shit and work through it.
Yep. I'm telling you, I think the greatest spiritual gift anyone can have is self-awareness. Like, it has to start there.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's not a negative thing. I mean, like, not to get on a soapbox, but I was told the same thing as you, Jeff. Christ esteem, not self-esteem. Get to know God. Take care of other people. It's actually really sad. I think 2s are set up to fail in evangelicalism, at least in the ways my church was, because you're praised for all those negative sides of yourself, like the codependent sides. People will literally clap in church because, you're pushing yourself down and helping other people.
Can you assign a numbers to systems? Like, is evangelicalism an 8 or a 9?
Absolutely. Well, I do it in terms of churches and organizations. So if any of you out there want me to come and teach the Enneagram to any organization or church, I would be happy to do that. But I would say systemic institutions, absolutely, that you can assign a type.
So at emergent churches would be like a 4.
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
They're really special.
I create a pretty amazing emergent worship service because it totally fits into all of that stuff for me. I love it.
That's really interesting. Would you be willing to diagnose families, Casey, for a fee?
Yeah, I would. I would love that.
So
and I would love to sit with families. I would love to sit with families and talk about, like, how did you see this all playing out? So,
I think that appeals to certain types and not others, though, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. And that's where I wanted to go in terms of talking about the heart types. So 2s, 3s, and 4s. We're willing to go there in a way that none of the other types are, because we're not afraid to talk about the deep things that make us vulnerable or feel pain, especially 4s. I would say that for 4s, one of the things that we bring is a strong emotional intelligence. We know ourselves well, very well. And so if you really are in a rough, dark place, call your friends who are 4s, because they know the darkness and they're not afraid to sit in it with you. And they have language for it, in a way that, like, my partner who's a 6, he sort of stays very far from things like that because it's scary. It's scary to go to those dark places. But for 4s, it's easy because we know it so well. I mean, Kurt Cobain, a lot of artists are 4s, and they struggle with suicide and addiction issues. And I think it's because we feel that darkness. We know that darkness within ourselves. And I think that that's also why evangelicalism for 4s is a big thing, right? If you're told every Sunday, like I was, that you're broken and depraved, 4s will say, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
that speaks to your soul on a weird
That's
level.
right. It speaks right to my soul. Nobody will ever, but on the other side of that, right? How many of us grew up hearing, you are a chosen generation, you are special and unique, and God has a plan and purpose for your life.
And
oh
you're
my God,
weird,
Forrest.
and that's good. It's a good thing that you're weird with all your friends.
That's right. It's not because you're overweight and kind of, awkward. It's because Jesus chose you. But for fours, we totally pick up on that.
I think my unique struggle as a two is like somatically speaking, like bringing into my body all of the stress of systems or other people. I internalize that and hold it in my shoulders and in my body.
Yep.
Jeff, I don't know
Twos
if
carry
you
the
ever
world
do that,
on their
but,
shoulders.
There's a
Absolutely.
lot of internalization.
And that's what I mean by, I think that twos actually love people, where fours, we just love ourselves,
Which is really helpful, because you said emotional intelligence. There are different types of emotional intelligence. There's interpersonal, which I think twos do really well at, being an empath, like seeing other people's needs and problems, but we don't really know ourselves. Knowing yourself is a large part of emotional intelligence. There are so many, especially in my experience in counseling, especially men, have a hard time articulating what emotions they're feeling, and that actually causes problems in their relationships. If you don't know yourself and you don't know what you're feeling, it's so hard to name what's happening in you. And fours are great at that, being able to have the language of, this is what's happening to me. And so I like that. Yeah, call your four friend. They'll help you. They'll help you put words to the stuff you're feeling.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I mean, I feel like we just scratched the surface, but this could be like a 3-hour long episode. So, Casey, any closing remarks, anything you really want people to leave with in terms of the Enneagram and what might compel them to?
Yeah, we definitely just scratched the surface here, but this is what I just want to put my pastor hat on for a moment and talk about why this matters to progressive Christians and why this should matter to everybody. So for me, salvation is about wholeness, the wholeness of life, right? It's being connected to your neighbor, your community, to God, and to yourself. And I think that when we talk about who Jesus was and his idea of I've come so that you may have life and have it abundantly, it's rooted in being able to see yourself more clearly and see yourself connected to the people around you. And that's why the Enneagram matters to me. Because the Enneagram allows me to see the places, my blind spots, my shadow self, the places where I need to grow and develop myself so that I can be more available, not just to God, but also to my neighbor and to myself. And so I would encourage anybody to do that deep dive into the work of the Enneagram and to truly notice where it is that you're caught up. Because now that we've had this conversation, Jeff and Alan, hopefully you'll be able to ask for the help that you need. You'll be able to trust that the people in your life who say they love you actually mean it, despite what you can offer them. Do you hear that?
I hear that. I don't like it.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. Right.
I want to echo what you're saying from the whole pastor position. Like, I'm all about informed consent. And if you're going to give your life to God, know what you're giving, to be honest. Like, until you own yourself and you know yourself, you can't give what you don't own. And I know a lot of times in evangelicalism, we're told we don't own ourselves, but like that's the first step of maturity. Is like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I am. And I am now giving that over into a relationship with someone else. I am going to be reconciled to my family. I'm going to be reconciled to God. And like that process is a holy thing, but it does start with some self-knowledge. And that's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. And I think that for so many of us, we wander through the world just sort of getting by, right? And we don't do the deep dive of figuring out who we are and what we really want. You know, there's just sort of an expectation that you do the mundane. But I don't think that you can really love another and tell, right, what is the greatest commandment? Love your neighbor as yourself. But if you can't love yourself, as RuPaul, the goddess of the world, would say, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love anybody else? And so in loving another and loving my partner and loving my congregation, I have to first love myself and know how to love myself. Know how to hear the desires of my own heart and meet those needs so that I can hear them in another and walk alongside of them as they meet their needs.
It's weird to say this, but that was one of Jeff and my first conversations. I remember a long time ago, Jeff being like, you have to be able to love yourself to love other people. And I disagreed vehemently with him. And I can't even remember why. But I thought that was so wrong.
You did. Like,
we were standing outside of Chili's. Your wife was working there. We were walking in to Chili's to like, go eat dinner or whatever. And I remember having that conversation with her. I knew exactly where I was standing. I'm
pretty sure it lasted through the meal and then back out the doors as well.
Probably.
Yeah. Knowing Alan, yeah, probably. And 3 days later.
Uh-huh.
Yep. All right. Well, let us know what you think. If you have more questions about the Enneagram or you want more resources, we will put it in the show notes at irenicast.com/127. You can comment there. And as always, you can, of course, add your voice to this particular conversation also at the show notes at irenicast.com/127. And all the links and everything will be there. Casey, thank you for this. And I'm looking forward to the other side of the music where we're going to play a little round of Jesus Juke. And
let's do it.
Should be fun. So at this point, Jesus Juke is a staple of Irenicast. We've probably done this segment more than we have any other ones, and we particularly like to do it with guests who are a part of the segment. Sometimes we just have straight up interviews, but whenever we have a guest co-host like Casey, we like to bring this one out because it helps us get to know each other a little bit, lightens up the mood, and unknowingly reveal our Enneagram numbers in the process, even though we've already done that.
I'm not going to interrupt you.
Yeah. If you want to know where this game came from, you can listen to any other time we've done this segment where Alan explains this. And we're not going to allow him to do it this time because it's pretty straightforward. If you want the origins of this game, go back and we'll put in the show notes other episodes where Alan explained it endlessly and over again in repetition. But maybe that's just I don't know.
I think it's helpful.
Nope. All right. So how this works, if you're listening to this for the first time, is each of us have come up with an item or a thing or an idea, and we have to present it to the other two hosts, and then they have to turn it into a sermon illustration. Usually we lean towards the like cheesy, stuff you would hear in our former evangelical context, or it can be, whatever.
The fun and fundy.
Right. Yeah. So we try
I am so excited for this game.
So we try to have fun with it. And, this is probably one of my favorite segments that we've done. This and, the title of the segment we have yet to rename Jesus or Jay-Z, where we look at song lyrics and stuff like that. But
I like the sound ones. And Casey and I were talking about that the other day. About the guessing the sounds
of the sound charades.
So for those of you that don't know, I've lost 165 pounds, and so the other night I was out walking, jogging, listening to your guys' last podcast episode where Melanie, right, or
Melody, yeah.
not
Mel.
Mona. I know, not
right.
Mona.
The artist formerly known as Mona.
That's right, the artist formerly known. And I'm like yelling on the street out loud. Like yelling the answers. So I feel like next time I definitely want to do that one because I think I will win. So
perfect. That'll be fun. It's so hard to come up with sounds, though. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, the sound charades one is
that
awesome.
was hilarious.
We'll
that
put a link
really
in the
hilarious.
show notes if you'd like to listen to that as well. Okay, so Casey, since you are our guest, why don't you go ahead and present to us your first item to be Jesus juked?
All right, my first item is a dry board eraser.
Dry board eraser.
I can go first.
Okay.
Okay. So in every classroom across America, when you walk in, you'll see some items that are just endemic to the classroom. For instance, chairs and desks and a little apple on the teacher's desk up front. And you always see when there's boards up front in front of the classroom that there is markers and there's dry erasers, no matter what, in every single classroom. And just like how there's always a dry eraser that you can use to wipe away the things you've been working on, Jesus is always there in your heart somewhere, just in everyone's heart, that when you are maybe caught your life up in such a way that you're working on all the wrong things, you're going down the wrong path.
Yes.
All you have to do is pick up that dry eraser. Someone has to use it. You have to pick it up and you can wipe that stuff away.
There you go. There
Amen.
it is.
All right. So we're all familiar with the dry erase board, and we're all familiar with the dry eraser. We have the soft felt side that wipes away mistakes, things that we regret putting up on the wall. And then there's the other side, the hard, rigid side that if we tried to scratch across that board would ruin the canvas in which we display our lives.
Oh, come on.
And I just want to encourage you that as you approach the world, as you step into the spaces that you inhabit through your work, through your life, through your family, that you approach it with the soft felt side, where you approach people with love and compassion instead of aggression and hardness.
Wow. Look at that too coming out. Great.
Allow God to nurture your soft side in everything you do. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, that was good, guys. That was hilarious. Well, so Jeff, I have to give it to you.
I know. Why does Jeff have to always A+ what I do?
That was so good. That was so good. I'm gonna come to the world with a softer side. I will carry that with me today.
Expose the belly of your spirit.
The felt up. Oh my gosh.
All right. So I'll go next. We're gonna pit Casey versus Alan here, and the item is a lens cap.
This is a preaching championships.
A lens cap.
I can go first or second. It's totally up to you, Casey.
Please go first.
Okay. I've been around photography a little bit and know how cameras work. I'm gonna do the self-effacing pastor thing. I don't really know that much about technology, but I do know that you have to take care of it, that you can't just do anything you want with cameras because you might hurt them. And so I know that when you're using a camera, the lens is actually one of the most expensive parts. Is that right? Does anybody have cameras? Yes?
Yes.
Jeff,
yes,
you use
very.
cameras? Absolutely.
Very expensive.
And so when you're not using them, it's very important that if they're going to be exposed to light, that it can damage them, that you need to put lens caps on to prevent dust and light and all kinds of things from scratching those lenses. And just like that, the eyes of our soul that zoom in on things in the world that we expose ourselves to, we must be very careful to put on the protection of Christ and use the lens cap of Jesus to protect us from things that might harm or scratch our soul, that we might expose ourselves to. So it's very important to keep that in mind as we walk around in our lives.
Amen.
Amen.
A lens cap was kind of hard, but here we go. So whenever you use a camera to take pictures or to capture moments that are beautiful, you zoom in, you take pictures. But would it work if you had the lens cap on? Of course it wouldn't, right? And so I think that there are things and places in our lives where we have allowed the lens cap to block us from seeing ourselves more clearly, seeing the world around us more clearly. And therefore, my invitation for you this morning, friends, is to take off the lens cap. Find the places in your life where you have blinded yourself, where you have not been able to see because you have blocked yourself from seeing the truth of your life, the truth of a world that is blossoming all around you.
Amen. Let the light in.
Amen.
That's right.
All right. I'm going to have to go with Alan on this one. And the reason is I feel like you committed to the character of the pastor who is using an example of something they know nothing about to express something. And I thought that commitment and consistency to the character was impressive. Was impressive, Alan. So I'm going to give it to you.
That's actually one of my biggest pet peeves, or where pastors make statements about fields they know nothing about. And they're like, oh, so in physics, like, you know, physicists don't know what they're talking about, or like, you know, this expert doesn't know what they're talking about. It's like, dude, stay in your lane. It's so great.
All right, Alan, what's your?
All right. I'm going to give you tardigrade. Tardigrades are little tiny animals that look like bears, but they're super small and they can survive basically anything. They're one of the only animals that can survive the vacuum of outer space, and they're like microscopic and they look like little bears that move around.
That is a nerdy ass example. All right.
Yeah, that's awful.
Hey, tardigrades are awesome. Hey, there is nothing. You know what? I think it was. Who said this? I knew it was a 15th century mystic who said all creatures, if you looked at them if you had the light inside of you, they would be mirrors of the divine, and they'd reflect God no matter how small they are. When you
said tardigrade, I was thinking like your grade for your attendance at school.
For being tardy.
Could have gone with that, but a tardigrade. All right.
No, little tiny microscopic bear.
Oh, man.
That can survive anything.
That can survive anything.
Freezing. Yeah, anything. The humble tardigrade.
All right. Casey, do you want to go or should I?
I feel like I will go.
Okay.
But I just lost the first round, so I'm trying to figure out if am I trying to like mock an evangelical preacher? Is that what I'm doing here?
You're just trying to play that. You're trying to play to my preferences, like apples to apples. Like what's going to resonate with me?
Okay.
What's going to appeal to Alan?
All right. Well, here we go. So tardigrades can survive in any system. Alan was saying. I didn't even know what this was until like 5 seconds ago. So here we go. I think that as we look at tardigrades and we know that they can survive anything, I would also say that one of the things that we are capable of is surviving situations. That we live in a world that is full of destruction and tragedy that surrounds us all the time. And one of the things that, as long as you're living, that you have done at every moment of your life is survived. You have survived. I don't know. This is awful. So I'm just going to say amen.
I'm actually now leaning in. You just hooked me. I was actually ready to be preached to.
I don't know. This is tardigrades.
I was like, Casey, I've survived so much. How do you know?
That's right. Alan, you totally have survived. And that's the good news, right? Is that no matter what happens in your life, that you will wander with God on this journey and you will make it. You will survive, just like a tardigrade. Your survival rate of everything you have gone through so far is 100%. Congratulations.
You know what someone told me recently? They said the only relationship that fails is one you don't make it out of.
Yep, that's right.
It's pretty interesting. Okay, Jeff.
All right.
Your turn.
We are told in the good book that the three things that are eternal are faith, hope, and love. And I want to talk to you today about faith.
Come on, preacher.
That's right. Come on.
I'm
so bad at this.
There's this thing in the universe. It's called a tardigrade. And I'm not talking about being late to school.
Yes.
I'm talking about the smallest organism in the universe that is eternal, that will always be there, that nothing can destroy. And Jesus says your faith is like a mustard seed, small but strong, small but everlasting, small but will create something large and wonderful and beautiful in the long run. And this, my friends, is how we should view our faith. Something small and indestructible that will blossom into the everlasting love of the universe. Amen. Let us pray.
Oh my God.
I don't see how tardigrades blossom, but yeah, the metaphor is pretty good.
They live in the blossoming universe.
They blossom in a blossoming universe. I was gonna pick Jeff, but I think I have to go with Casey only because he spoke to me. I felt my heart there. I was like, the evangelical side of me wasn't even necessarily with you, Jeff, but definitely I've survived a lot. Yes, I have, Pastor. You're so right. So I'm going to go with Casey, but those are both really good, especially for not knowing what tardigrades were a minute ago. Trust me, they're the coolest, nerdiest thing you'll ever look into. Love it.
Can just for clarification, Alan, about these tardigrade things, are they the things that look like little uncircumcised penises?
Probably. No, I don't think so. Those are something
You know
else.
what I'm talking about? They're like microorganisms.
Actually, they might be the ones you're talking about.
Yeah, visual aid might have
like
changed.
Little bears, though. Just look up tardigrade. TARDIGRADE. Look it up and tell me if that's what you're talking about. Because there's other ones that look like the uncircumcised penises you're talking about that I've seen.
Yes, that's totally what they are. Yes, they look like little uncircumcised penises.
Well, if I knew that would have changed the whole thing, right?
Whole thing, right? We could have talked about covenant and everything.
We'd have gone Old Testament on that one.
That's right. The everlasting covenant.
All right. Well, that will do it for us this week. Casey, thank you so much for joining us and for co-hosting and giving us just a little sample of the Enneagram and putting it into perspective for us. How can people find out what you have going on? How can people contact you?
So you can follow me at Twitter at The Queerly Faithful Pastor, or you can check out my blog, which is thequeerlyfaithfulpastor.com, or my church website, loomisUCC.org.
Sounds good. Alan, how about you? How can people?
Always Facebook, Rev Alan O'Brien, / Rev Alan O'Brien. Look me up. And also, I just want to say I'm looking forward to Casey eventually coming back on here and maybe bringing the other intersections team, Bonnie, who's a 6, Raj, who's an 8, and talking about the other sides of the Enneagram and spending time with those. Because Casey, this was helpful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to come on anytime, guys. I also have a Rev Casey Tinnin Facebook, so you can check me out there as well. But thank you for your time today, guys, and I would love to come on anytime.
Well, you're always welcome. The door's always open. As for me, you can follow me on all the socials at Jeff Manildi and listen on the second and fourth Thursday of every month to my other podcast, Divine Cinema, at divinecinema.net. As for Irenicast, don't forget to subscribe to the show and never miss an episode. We're available on all major podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and many more. And while you're there, if your platform allows it, leave us a rating and or review. We're always looking for more and more ways to hear from you. You can also fill out our listener survey at irenicast.com/survey. The information you give us is super helpful for us as we move forward and continue to evolve the show. That's irenicast.com/survey. So for this week, I'm Jeff.
I'm a 2, and not just on the hotness scale.
And I'm Casey.
Thanks for joining the conversation.